Hey guys, welcome to ManOn2nd, where you can find us live on the 5 Reasons YouTube page and streaming live at the same time on the at ManOn2nd Twitter page. Back as always with Joe Frisaro. Joe, this has been a really weird past 10 games for the Marlins. We saw a high win streak, immediately followed by a low win streak, and this is what we kind of imagine the Marlins having, a season that we imagined them having. A bunch of highs, a bunch of lows that ended up being an 80-win team. And we're experiencing it early on in the season. And what's your feelings and takes around this team right now?
Yeah, I mean, when you step back, obviously when we're recording this, they've just lost their fifth straight. They lost Thursday night 2-1 at San Diego. So that's their fifth straight after they had won 7 in a row. So, it's a little bit all or nothing right now. But as you try to, take the lens back and look at the bigger picture, they're one game under 500. And, we kind of envision them to be a close to, but maybe not yet, a 500 team. So they're 12-13. They're 5.5 behind the Mets, who are streaking. They're 19-9 as of this podcast. We'll get into the Mets and the division a little bit later in the podcast. But what the Marlins are showing is, how worried are you, Mike? That's the question. How worried should we be? And here are some things. We know they're going to pitch, even though the losing streak, the starters had kind of sputtered, save last night, Thursday night, when Jesus Luzardo was very good. But offensively, it's going to be the key to the wins, because I think the starting pitching, barring serious injuries and attrition, should do their part, keep them in games. So they got to figure out how to win. Now, there's some quick team numbers. They're 15th in majors in batting average at .234. So they're middle of the pack hitting. They're tied for 20th in runs. So last year they were like 29th in runs. So they've improved the offense in runs, but they're still 20th. Is technically bottom third, the low end, bottom third. Now, OPS is or OBP, excuse me, on base percentage. They're tied for 10th at .319. So they're getting traffic. So you would think that eventually that trend continues, the run production to go up. Home runs, which has beaten them in the last few games, on Thursday night, solo shots by Manny Machado accounted for all the offense San Diego needed. The night before, Pavin Smith here in Miami, local kid from Jupiter, hits the 2-run homer in the ninth that beats the Marlins. Well, the Marlins are hitting their fair share of homers. They're tied for 18th. So, again, a year ago, they're about 29th or 30th in home runs. So I'm seeing stuff from the offense collectively that they're a little bit in that middle of the pack, or trending toward that. So you'd think the run production would be good. So if they could be, to me, and I want your feedback on it as you kind of analytically look at this, if they could get their run production to about middle of the pack, I think they're going to be in really good shape as long as they're pitching in the top third, and I think they're capable of that. So they don't have to be a top third offense, but it can't be a bottom third offense in baseball. Your thoughts on those numbers?
Well, let me ask you. You read off those numbers, and then we take into account their record and just the way they've played. Would you just say that more of this losing streak has a lot of unluckiness to it?
Well, it's a degree of it, yeah, because they lost 5 straight one-run games.
Yeah, so those are, and we talked about that before the season too. We talked about those one-run games because that was a problem. It was successful in the COVID shorted season, and then last year they got the bad end of it, and they started to lose those one-run games, and you have to account for those games happening. And so when you ask, am I worried? I get more concerned about, okay, these individual guys, the Garcias, the Solairs, who were paid here to produce, rather than if I'm worried about the record over a 5-game sample. If that makes, you get what I'm saying? If that makes sense?
Yeah.
Like, I think we can count this losing streak as a lot of unluck. You play those games a couple more times, maybe they go 2-3. And then you're one game over 500, and we're having a little bit different tone. So when I look at the concern level of this team right now, I look at, Garcia and Soler, the guys that you brought here, not producing as well, and probably being a big part of the reason why this team is now struggling the past 5 games.
Oh, no question. And as of this recording, Garcia hitting 171, a homer, 4 RBIs. Soler 167, 3 homers, 8 RBIs, and you had $80 million more than that wrapped up in those two over X amount of years. So they're going to play every day. And now, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt that these guys have track records. They may tear it up in July, August, September, and while some other guys may flounder, but it is painful for them right now that the heart of their order has not really been coming through, and that's where these guys are hitting. So obviously the onus is going to be on them. But I'm going to ask, are you a little concerned? Jesus Sanchez now, this is all three outfielders. He's down to 244, 309, 439 is slash line. So he's even on base now, just at 309. Last 15 games, Mike, this is what worries me, is 149 BA, but 47 at-bats, 22 strikeouts. It's almost 50%, high 40% of striking out. Is he kind of now the league is onto him after a hot start and seeing him a couple of months last year? And, have we put too much on Sanchi? We believe in the player, but, here's a young player who's really kind of struggling. And 15 games is you kind of measure in 15 type game windows because that's half a month.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be a little concerned. I mean, and to his credit, he was kind of thrown into a little bit of an unfair position. We didn't think he would be the starting center fielder going into the season. So I think you got to be concerned because now they've kind of moved him into a platoon role over the past few games. So you have to start to wonder is what's their belief in him and what you do with him throughout the next few weeks of this season. Because as you said, top three outfielders not producing. That's what, the 3, 4, 5 hitters in the lineup every night. Yeah. Yeah, you're not getting that type of production out of them, and I don't know, like where do you go from here for that?
Yeah, because one option, and he was just sent down, is Brian De La Cruz, and we were talking before we hit the live button, just kind of going over my issue with the Marlins sending down Brian De La Cruz isn't the fact that they sent him down; it's their process has become very confusing when you look at how they've done this month. And here they're talking a lot organizationally about every game's important, trying to win every game, don't want to do development necessarily at the big league level, and so they've magnified all the every game's super important. And I think they got a little comfortable with the success of their starting pitching in the month of April, which I think the starter's ERA in April was 3.05. I think that was sixth best in baseball, all of baseball, not just National League. Then during the first 4 games, now Luzardo pitched great, 6 innings, 2 runs last night, but in the 4 losses at home, the starter ERA was 9.16 and it didn't go very far. And what happened then was MLB afforded all teams the opportunity to carry an extra pitcher, 14 pitchers max, through basically the end of the month. I think one day at the end of May, they have to get to 13, no more. And you got to think long term. You got to think over 162. You can't just get caught up in, we're hot today, so we're going to keep riding this momentum there. And so they decided to go with 13 pitchers. They should have sent De La Cruz down the first of the month. When rosters, they should have kept the extra pitcher. Well, now what happened was they let the kid produce, and they went with 13 pitchers, but because their starters had 4 straight games of not going very far, their bullpen gets taxed. Now they decide they need to go with 14 pitchers. They bring up another pitcher, a reliever, and they send down the guy who is producing. So your outfield of offensive production. And now, granted, he can't have 25 plate appearances in a month. That's just not fair to him. And to his credit, he's produced in those 25 plate appearances, but that's very rare. Very rare in baseball. That's why pinch hitters, if you hit 230 as a pinch hitter, it's usually pretty good because you're not getting regular at bats. So again, it's their process. A few things they've done. They let Sanchez face lefties, didn't let Jazz face lefties. Now Sanchez is struggling against everybody. Jazz is getting some at bats against. They wanted Jazz hitting 9th for the first 2 weeks of the season. They couldn't win a game. Then they put Jazz as the leadoff hitter. They win 7 in a row, and they have a winning month of April. You know, it's like, I get it. You're using analytics. You're trying to use the data to the best of your knowledge. But they pinch hit for Jazz in Atlanta with Dela Cruz.
Yeah.
Now he's off the roster and he's going to go play every day in Jacksonville. Again, I think it's kind of conflicting. You know, it's a fluid situation whenever you're dealing with your roster, but there seems to be some inconsistencies with their process, and it's almost like they're hoping, oh my gosh, we need now John Birdie to be really good, and he has been, but he's also a utility player. You can't count on your utility players carrying you. You have to count on your big boys and your big guns, and that's Garcia, Soler, Aguilar's picking it up, Cooper, those guys, the Sanchi. If they're hitting in those prime run-producing spots, they got to come through, and you just can't have all of them down.
Let me ask you with Dela Cruz, though. Where do you think they go with him from here? Because at the beginning of the season, when he was optioned, like we mentioned before the pod, he's been optioned before. He wasn't supposed to make this team. He was supposed to go to AAA, get some at-bats, and, you know, just get some playing time down there. Do they now look at the Jesus Sanchez situation and maybe in a couple weeks, couple months, flip them if Sanchez isn't producing well and Dela Cruz goes down there? Because is this a mixed message essentially you're sending to the organization or to the team? Because,
to the players, yeah.
To the players, yeah. You know, you're sending a bad message of you're gonna produce, you're going down, and we're trying to win every day. But one of the best offensive players so far this season is down because of our mistake of roster construction.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And, you know, if you now, and, you know, we're being hypothetical that Sanchi is going to keep struggling. It comes down to, is he your guy? And, you know, you got to ride Sanchez. There's a lot to like about him. And see, the problem with this mindset of you have to win every day. I mean, I've covered this team, you know, firsthand for 20 years. Even on rebuild teams, they were trying to win every day, but they might have been trying to develop. And, you know, it's what if you face, let me give you Jazz, for instance, as an example. He's a young player who doesn't have, you know, 2020 came up, missed basically the first month or whatever, the COVID year. He gets in the big leagues. He gets a little bit of playoff experience. 2021, he's your starting second baseman, and he plays pretty much the whole year, a couple of, you know, IL stints, but still a young player. And now he's 24 years old, and you're penalizing him for not playing enough and then using last year's numbers to evaluate how much playtime he gets. Well, Jazz has made the decision easy for them because no matter what they've done, he's answered the bell. Oh, you want to hit me ninth? I'm going to be your best hitter, so hit me one. Oh, he's kind of responding. But it's hard for players when they're considered your guy. Failure is part of this sport. It's just natural. Guys have slumps, and they play through them. You start taking them out of the lineup, you may exasperate those slumps because they'll never have the opportunities to work out of the slump. And if you're going to say we're not developing or we got to win today, you know, Jack McKeon in the World Series played. Media. We were asking him. Alex Gonzalez was like 2 for 40 something in the postseason, 2 or 3 for 40 something. We were wanting him benched, and then it's the World Series. He hits the home run, the walk-off homer in extra innings. Alex Gonzalez, who everybody would have had not in the lineup, hits the biggest home run of the season. It tied the World Series up, and the Marlins went on to win the World Series. You know, with the guy who was allowed, he was Jack's guy. And, I think that you have to send the message that these are my guys. And I think they're doing it to Soler and Garcia. And I have no problem with that, that if they want to do that, but they probably should get a little bit, hey, you know what? Some of your at-bats haven't looked so good. We need to get you out of the lineup a day or two because somebody else might hit if we could pluck this game and win this game. But and then over 162, you're not going to completely be shut down. But you can't carry a guy like Dela Cruz and only give him 25 plate appearances in a month. That makes no sense.
It feels like there's a little bit of a disservice to him this year for the way they constructed his.
He's done everything they've asked him to do, and they just don't have the roster spot for him. What do you do with him if you're him and you're a pro? Do you understand that this is the nature of it? They've been. I think another thing that's happened is normally injuries will occur. They've been very fortunate to not have any. Wendell had a little bit of a tight hamstring, missed a few games. They ended up losing those games. But other than that, their regular position players have been fine. And I think what you need for his, all he can do is go down to AAA, do his part, make the best of it, be ready. And if there's an injury or the production at, like you say, another position is that, keeps regressing, that you feel you have to make something else. But I would be leery of optioning Jesus Sanchez, at any time soon, because, you want him to be here for good.
Yeah. And to kind of switch it a little bit, with the Marlins being now losing the 5 straight, they find themselves 12-13, 5.5 games out of first place of the Mets. The Mets had a really fun game last night, kind of like showing everyone that, they're not out of something. We both discussed at the beginning of the season how good this Mets team was. We both liked them. Right now, they stand pretty good at 5.5 games up on the Marlins. That comeback last night was really nice. Do you think the Marlins can catch them, and what do you feel about the Mets right now?
Yeah, you got to wonder. I mean, the Mets the best team in the National League, and it's you say that Milwaukee is 18-8, and the Dodgers are 16-7, but the Dodgers are the Dodgers. They'll win over 100 games, probably win it in probably the toughest division, the NL West. The Mets are establishing themselves as the class of the East. I mean, they were down 7-1. That game was on MLB Network leading into the Marlins playing. And I was watching. I saw the Phillies get through the 8th inning, preserving the 7-1 lead. I just assumed that game was over, and I flipped over to Marlins. I didn't even check on it until I saw John Heyman hours later tweeting about the comeback, and I was stunned to see it. But yeah, to come all the way back from 7-1 on the road. First of all, we know what that does to a team. It just raises their confidence and their energy level. Has to completely demoralize the Phillies, who are now 11-15, and Joe Girardi. There's already rumblings about his job status. Atlanta's 12-15, and Nationals are 9-18. They're pretty dreadful. So the Mets are the class. I mean, we'll probably talk a bit more about them, as we growing this podcast. But they got Scherzer going today. They're doing it without DeGrom, but they got that Tyler McGill, who's a really good pitcher. They had the combined no-hitter earlier, a week or so ago. They're getting production from everyone. Their lineup is designed to be scary. And when you come back seven runs down in the 9th inning, what though that says to me. You always hear about putting a closer in a non-save situation, how they don't perform. And a lot of times these teams, they usually throw a reliever in there who doesn't see much work, and they give them that 9th inning. The next thing you know, the guy gives up 4 runs, and next thing you know, it's a save situation. But you're trying to, so everyone's scrambling in that bullpen. I think when we talk about we're in this, you got to win every day mentality, because the expanded playoffs has created this mindset that you gotta make a go for it, because there's going to be a lot of teams bunched up there. But do you have to approach you almost can't take wins for granted, even with big leads. You got to not necessarily say I'd go with my closer, especially if he had gone 2 or 3 days in a row. I would just not necessarily go with a mop-up guy and go, try to have 2 or 3 people there that you can find that are not going to walk 3 guys, and then there's a 2-run bomb, and then next thing you know, there's a game. Because how many times do you see that, Mike? Big lead, and the first batter walks. The next thing you give hope, because you get a walk, then a hit by pitch, and then maybe an error. And next thing you know, you got traffic. And when there's traffic, anything can happen.
Yeah, we saw that in maybe 3 nights ago in that Marlins Diamondbacks game, where the Marlins were down, 5-0. They got a couple runners on. They got the Jazz double, and then the Aguilar single, and all of a sudden it was 5-4. I think they ended up losing the game, but
No, but it got him back in it. Yeah. Well, I think that they had one inning where they had like 2 walks and a hit batter, and I think they had one inning.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah,
one inning they had
like
3 hit batters or two hit batters. And it was like you could see that especially a team like the Marlins or the Phillies, if you got a 15-game lead, yeah, then you could get away with it. Losing one game is probably not going to derail your season, but when you're scrambling, you can't necessarily just assume that it's going to be an easy. And now I get it. You got to use your roster, and you can't use your big bullets every night. But you also can't lose 6-run leads in the ninth either.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting. I'm really interested in the Phillies right now because how many straight years now have we talked about, okay, Philly's going to be the team. Like, they're finally going to put it together. They had hired Girardi a couple years back. We're like, all right, Girardi's the right guy for that job. And now here they are standing at 11-15. And like you said, there's already calls for Girardi's job. And with the way the Mets are playing, and we know the Braves are going to catch fire, and we hope the Marlins stay competitive, is there a path for them this season?
The Phillies, I tell you, this is another demoralizing thing I find in that game last night. That was an Aaron Nola start. Yeah. So you get, when you get a Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola start, and Nola was really good. 7 innings, 3 hits, 1 run, 7 Ks and a walk. That's a win. When your starter does that, what would we do here if Sandy did that or Pablo did that? He did everything. So you wasted that start. And, they even had Familia go the 8th, and then they went with Norwood, who, now he's got a 10.29 ERA, 7 innings, 5 Ks, set 171 whip. It's like that guy went a third of an inning, 4 hits, 4 runs, and a homer. So you got one guy out, and then Knievel has to come scrambling, and he's one of their guys. But, the damage was done, and, he went 4 hits, 3 runs, 1 strikeout, and just, again, if you're the Phillies, you got to be a little concerned. And I was a little concerned because one of our favorite guys, Nick Castellanos, I saw him get hit by a pitch and come out of the game. Mm-hmm. He got hit on the wrist, and they did X-rays. I guess the X-rays came back negative, but you're going to keep an eye on that. You got to be careful of small bone, cracks and fractures, and so we hope Nick's okay. But imagine if he goes down. It's like that's even more demoralizing. And, Atlanta, I think the Mets have won like every series but one or something like that. So, they're, they got Buck Showalter. They got, they've been involved in some scraps, some bench clearing stuff. But, they're pitching and playing with a real purpose and a real focus that I don't really see them just being typical Mets barring, a rash of bad luck. So I think, we've kind of thought, I think if we thought the Marlins would be more of a wild card contender than a division contender, because I don't see the Marlins being, they were a 95 loss team last year. Yes, they made some nice upgrades, but are they really a 15-20 over team? We see them closer to a little bit over 500 team rather than, that. But you still don't want a 5.5 game deficit to swell to 8-10 by the time you get to June. So the key moments, again, it's and going out west, never easy. For the Marlins on these West Coast trips, even, Arizona's, they're pitching. They don't hit very much, but they're pitching. And after the Padres series, they'll be going to Arizona. But I don't know. I'm not overly concerned with the Marlins because, like I said, if their numbers, I think they're going to – it's just the natural ebb and flows of the season. But to be a legit contender – you're nailing down a good number of these games because our friends, the Rays, find a way of doing it too. Tampa Bay, they worry me a little bit because of all the injuries to their pitchers. But, the Rays, they just, they're only just a couple of games behind the Yankees. The Yankees had a 10-game, win streak has snapped the other day. But, they had a Shane McClanahan start and, he's their ace and, you don't lose Shane McClanahan starts. And last night they got 4 runs in the 4th and made it hold up. They won 4-3 at Seattle. And I'm looking at McClanahan's line. 5 1/3, 5 Ks. He's typical, gets you into the 6th inning. He's electric when he's around the plate.
I mean, the Rays just continue to find a way, though, right? No matter what, they're third most wins right now in the AL. 2.5 games behind the Yankees. I know you say you're a little bit concerned about their pitching and their injury, but what about long term? How do you feel about them throughout the rest of the season?
If they get the guys back, if they could get, I'm looking, he's on the formula. Shane Bass, he's on the 60-day. They get some of those guys back. I think that they're going to be Luis Patino. These guys in their rotation who are down. That's what I just fear. They can't constantly. Now they do have minor league pitching that could come up and rescue them. And I guess if people flip the channels and watch a lot of baseball like I do, and you watch the end of, if I'm not at a Marlins game and I'm watching, if you watch the final 3 innings of Rays games and the final 3 innings of Marlins games, look at the ways that the really good teams, because that's when the game, as much as starting pitching gives you that shot, the games are usually decided by your pen and whether it's defensive plays, execution on offense, timely hits. Those are the things that, separate winning close and losing close. And the Rays just know how to do it. They know how to, they know how to minimize. They know how to win. And how is that knowing how to win? For one, they're not walking guys in the late innings. They're not, if they could get a double play, they get it. They don't misplay a ball and then get one out. And offensively, it's a 2-out hit is a very important, factor for them. And they got Wander Franco and they got Randy Arozarena, who are 2 legit star players who perform as star players. So it gets to when your big guys, if Garcia and Soler are winning games for you, you'll see more other guys. Oh, I was want to touch before we get off the mark. I really think Brian Anderson needs to play more. He's been getting hot. Wendell's back, but I think there's probably another reason why De La Cruz was down. They got to get a rotation, get Anderson playing more, and getting these guys rotated in and out, and weed out the cold bat if you have to, and still, hopefully for a hotter bat.
Yeah, you got to feel good for Anderson because he had a lot of attention on him going into the season, a lot of hate from the fans, thinking he didn't deserve the third base job, that he shouldn't be an everyday starter, that he probably shouldn't be on the team. But he's really been one of the more consistent players so far this year.
Yeah, I've never worried about Brian Anderson's ability. It's always been health. And I also seen a lot of players who miss a substantial amount of time. Sometimes they take a little while to get rolling again. So as long as he was healthy, I think he was going to be productive. And to his credit, he kind of overcame that really rough first week or so and started picking it up. And sometimes, when you see he gets a nice double in the gap, he may go 1 for 4, but an RBI double or a double that starts a rally. He doesn't know that player, man. I always get the credit, but sometimes that jump starts you into being a little bit more. But, I think that, Donnie and the analytics department and when they put these lineups together, you got to find ways to get Anderson more involved and because they're going to play Soler and Garcia. I just feel that, and again, I'm not opposed to that because you gave them the commitment. Now they have to live up to it and you got to give them every opportunity to. But, at least even if one of those guys would start hitting, it just kind of eases the burden on the rest of the lineup.
Yeah. Before we get out of here, let's just talk real quick about the game tonight. Alcantara on the mound versus Darvish. That's going to be a fun one to watch. You don't like to say must-win games in May or anything like that, but it would be nice to see the Marlins get this losing streak over with and start playing a little bit consistent because, really throughout the season, what we've seen so far is you pile up the losses, pile up the wins, and pile up the losses and just start getting a more of a consistent base going and, just try to compete here.
Yeah, when I'm looking for Sandy, and I have no worries about Sandy, I still believe he's their best, this is the prime opportunity for your ace to be your stopper. It's like you just stop against a great pitcher, you stop the losing, it stops with him. He takes the ball, he goes deep into the game. He wasn't his typical self in his last start. He's always going to be matched up against a really good pitcher. He had Logan Gilbert, a few days back, and that didn't go Sandy's way. But Darvish is an all-star as well, and you show why. That's why I look. And I think Sandy and Pablo have kind of shown that they could be the stoppers. and I think their starting pitching is too good to have really a prolonged losing streak. The only way it happens if you just don't score any runs, and except for the 8-7 or 9-8 game, whenever Pavin Smith hit the homer a few nights ago here, that was really the only kind of high scoring game of these. Others were 5-4, that type of game.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, but we appreciate everybody for tuning in. We'll put you can watch us live on 5 Reasons YouTube page later on today. Same thing on the Twitter page. We're going to be putting out another podcast early next week, and we're excited for you guys to check this out, and we're excited to listen and watch the Marlins throughout this week.